Hey, welcome back to Surfrider Studios and my video series on how to develop color film at home in your own bathtub. Today we're going to be focusing on the Patterson tank. I have the Super System 4, which essentially means I can develop 2 rolls of film at once. The reason I chose to have this, just 2 rolls at once, is because I like developing in small batches, because even though I know I'm doing it right, sometimes I get a little scared that something's going to mess up. So I just want to make sure that I only am developing or ruining 2 of the rolls of film rather than a lot of them. So essentially when you open this up, it looks like this. You have a lid, you have a little twisty thingy, you have a funnel looking thing, you have your film reels, and then of course you have the actual tank. This is the film reel. As you can see, it has the spots for 2 rolls of film to go onto it. The reason we use a Paterson tank is basically because most of us don't have a professional darkroom in our houses. So when we're developing our film, there's gonna be light exposure. So we use this because once you close the tank up completely, you can still put the chemicals in there and there won't be any light exposure, which is pretty cool. The reason we don't just take a film roll and throw it in the developer after you take the case off is because the film would only get onto the outsides of the roll, not the insides, because it's wound very closely. But as you can see, you have all these little concentric circles right here. And so the film goes in there and it gives it like a millimeter of space between each circle of the film, which means the chemicals can get in there and perfectly saturate the film and get it developed. When I first started using this, I read the instructions and I was like, okay, that seems self-explanatory. And so I put it in my darkroom bag. I opened my film canister in the darkroom bag and I was like, I have no idea how to use this. I do not know what I'm doing. And I really wanted to get the pictures off of that roll of film. So I didn't want to open the darkroom bag because it would completely light exposure it and it would ruin it. So I kind of sat there for 2 hours trying to figure it out. So I can tell you, I know what I'm doing when it comes to this. So it seems wasteful, but it's really handy to practice on a blank roll of film. I had accidentally left one in my car for like 4 or 5 months. And when I found it, it was just baking in the sun and it just seems as if it would no longer be viable to take photos on. So I took it out of the canister and now I just have this film to practice with. The actual film you'll be using when it comes out of the canister is going to have this little smaller piece here. And that's how you can feel like, oh, this is the start of my film. That's where I start. But since you can actually visualize this one, I had it cut off. So what you do is sometimes they'll be off, but you have these 2 little arrows here, 1 and 2. And you want to make sure you line those up. And then you're going to take your film and you're going to feed it in through the larger part of the arrow. And you're going to want to make sure it doesn't unroll, because if it does, it'll twist sideways and it'll be harder to feed it in through there. Then what you're basically going to do is you're going to twist the top of it, or bottom, however you prefer to see it, because it can be flipped either way. And you just keep twisting and twisting and twisting, and it's going to feed the film in through it. You're going to have to help align it, because occasionally if you twist too hard like this, it's going to come out of line. So you have to push it back in under the arrows, and you just keep twisting. And you just keep twisting until finally all of it goes in there and it's perfect. I make sure to just do an extra couple of twists just so that everything is perfectly aligned within it. And as you can see, now you have your gaps in between. When you're done with loading it into the darkroom bag, you put it back in the tank and you go ahead and put the funnel on. You have to make sure that you twist it closed. Once you do that, no light is going to come in. Even though it looks like there's a little hole at the end of this funnel, no light is going to happen in here. So you don't even have to use a lid if you don't want to. I do, just because I'm always like, oh, what if I did something wrong? But you really don't when you're taking it out of the bag. Now you can pour your chemicals in without light being exposed to it, which is really cool. It seems like, wow, how can this not have light in it? Like, it looks like there's a big crack there and there's a hole down the middle. But in reality, they've designed it in such a way that there's going to be absolutely no light. You can start pouring your chemicals in there. And then this is, I don't know what it's called, the technical term, but I call it a little mixing wand. So when it tells you, the instructions tell you to agitate it, you basically put it right in the middle there and it'll help you twist it. It has these two little slits on it so it can perfectly line up and attach to the film reel underneath the little funnel so you can twist it properly. The reason we agitate is so that all of the film gets covered with developer, Blix, all of that, just because you want to make sure there's no like air bubbles or anything, or leftover, like perhaps you got dust in your darkroom bag and it's on the film. So if you agitate it and spin the film around, it'll essentially get rid of that dust, get rid of those air bubbles, and make sure the whole entire surface area of the film is covered. Once that is done, and you have done everything the instructions tell you to, you can just open it. It's the scariest feeling in the world. You're like, oh my gosh, I opened it. And you take it out and you're like, oh, my film's gonna die. But it's not, because you've developed the whole entire thing. And then all you have to do is just take it by the end here, and you can just pull it out. Just like that. Bingo, that's your film. And of course, after you develop it, it is gonna be wet. So you have to make sure to sponge it off and hang it up. I got the Super System 4 Paterson tank off of Amazon for around $30. But if you want to develop more film at the same time, you can buy other systems that allow you to do more rolls of film at the same time. One reason I'd recommend against that is because then you're going to have a larger quantity of all your chemicals. And that essentially means that you're just going to have to like buy more of it. Whereas with a smaller batch of chemicals, you can just keep reusing it and you don't have to use all that quantity. There are instructions that come actually with the Patterson tank on how to agitate the film and things to do while you're developing it, but make sure you actually follow the instructions from your whatever chemicals you got, because sometimes the manufacturers, Patterson, use different chemicals than you do, so you want to make sure you do the chemicals. But of course, I'm going to run through all the steps, all the instructions of using chemicals, how to mix them, how to pour them, and that's going to probably be in one of the later videos. The one I'm going to do next week is how to use a darkroom bag, so you can learn all the steps to how to load your film into the Patterson tank, and then we can get started on film developing. So I hope this helps. I will be launching my video next Sunday if you are interested in that, and